Hey, everybody, it's Carrie and Dale here. And I also have a special guest here. This is Ellie. She was a little cranky. She's been sick, so we had to have her on with us today. So that's why I have my backup here. Dale is coming to the rescue in case we need to step off camera to handle her, since she's not doing super well. But we are going to be talking about all about warm season crops. It's going to be super fun day today. We're going to be talking a lot about different things that we are growing in our garden, as well as things that we are going to be in the future. And this is definitely not the be all and end all of the warm season crops. There are so many out there that you can plant, and there are so many that you can do. So if you guys have any questions throughout this entire time, please feel free to put them in the comment section, and we will get to them as we're going through or at the end. And we'll do our best to try and hit everybody's questions that they have. So yeah, I know I mentioned who I was. If you aren't aware, we are the creators of the From Seed to Spoon mobile app. This is my husband, Dale. I think I just said Dale, so I didn't say who you were really. So yeah.
Yeah, so we started gardening back in 2015-ish. This was our backyard back then. We lived in a neighborhood, and this is around the time that we both started working from home. And I'm a software developer, and I started getting into gardening because it made me feel better. And there's a lot of reasons why I got into gardening, but this is kind of what happened: is we got obsessed, and we turned our entire backyard into gardens. And we wanted to make an app to make it easier for other people to do the same thing. So we created our From Seed to Spoon app here, along with a couple of our friends. We got together and worked nights and weekends on it for a few years, and then Park Seed acquired our app, and now we work for Park Seed, and they help make our app a reality. So our app walks you through how to grow over 100 different fruits, herbs, and vegetables. It gives you planting dates based on where you live, and calculates it based off of your nearest weather station. It shows you pest information, companion plant information. It allows you to track and monitor your plants, gives you reminders, has all sorts of stuff in there. We'll be referencing it throughout this presentation a little bit today too, as we talk about how to grow some of these things. So,
and we're here in Zone 7 in Oklahoma City, and I'm really excited. Like, there's usually people from all around the country, so I would love to see you guys pop in the chat. Tell us where you're from so we can see a little bit of where everybody's joining us from today.
All right, well, let's kick this off. Let me pull up our presentation here. And like Carrie said, we're going to be talking about warm season growing. If you missed some of our other webinars earlier in the year, we've talked about growing in the cool season. We've talked about companion planting. We've talked about theme gardens, lots of other really good stuff that we've gone over. But today, talking all about what you can grow in the warm season. And before we get too much further into this, I want to stop and talk about our giveaway that we're doing. So at the very end, we're going to be giving away a 1-year subscription to the premium version of our app that lets you have unlimited plants that you log, access to our GrowBot AI chatbot that helps you with your gardening questions, calendar features, and a whole lot more. So stick around to the end. We're going to be giving away that, and let's get started. So let's start off by talking about when to plant your seeds, because this is going to differ depending on where you live. So that's one of the main reasons why we built our app, was to help you know when it's time to plant different things. So if you go into our app, there's a filter on this main plant list page that lets you filter down to plant now of what can be planted right now. And like if you look at tomatoes here, it shows you on this calendar view that tomatoes can be planted outside where we are starting in April and going through the summer. So that's a good place for us to start is with tomatoes. So with tomatoes, there's some weather considerations that you need to account for. What I mean by that is if the nighttime temperatures are going to be below 50, then you definitely do not want to plant them outside. You want to harden them off and gradually expose them to the elements until nighttime temperatures are definitely above, above the 50s, and then it's safe to plant them outside. Um, there's some considerations about, direct sow versus transplanting. Most people go the route of transplanting tomatoes, of either starting them indoors themselves, a few months before, or buying transplants from a nursery. But you can also direct sow seeds. We have tomatoes all the time that come up. They're called volunteer tomatoes, and they come from seeds from previous years. And that those tomatoes typically do better than the ones that we take all this care and transplanting in anyway. So that's another method. Is if you feel like you're behind, it's fine. Just go pop some tomato seeds in the ground. Most anywhere in the country, you should be getting pretty close to being able to do that, but especially anywhere near zone 7 where we are, you are good to go on just popping some tomato seeds into the ground. Another consideration to make is what type of tomato, whether it's a bush tomato, and I think our label is being blocked. Let me rearrange. Oh, I'm trying to okay, so over on the right are the vining tomatoes. Over on the left are the bush tomatoes. There's two different types of tomatoes. So the bush tomatoes grow big and bushy and make most all their tomatoes at the same time. They kind of put them all out at once. Whereas the vining tomatoes, you grow them along a trellis and they're going to continue to grow until you get the first cold weather that kills them. But they continue to put off tomatoes all summer long. So that's kind of the difference in tomatoes. For soil and fertilizer, you want to make sure you're giving them plenty of compost. And there's a really good fertilizer from Espoma. Andrew, can you pop a link into the chat of the tomato Espoma fertilizer? They make one specifically for tomatoes. That's a really good one to go with. So, Carrie,
I will say too that people always ask like which is better, determinate or indeterminate, and I tell them like honestly I like both of them because we do a variety of both. I think it's great to have like if you're going to grow 2 tomatoes, grow one of each because then you get like a bunch of tomatoes at once and then you can continue to have some throughout the season. And again, it just depends what you're growing for too. Like if you want to grow for salsa or for canning or jarring or preserving, anything like that, you'll be wanting to do the bush tomatoes, and that'll give you all of their harvest at once. But if you're wanting it just continually throughout the season, then go with vining. But everybody always asks like which one's better, and I don't think there's an answer to that. I think they're both wonderful, but I just think it's a personal preference. I think it's great to do both if you have the room for it.
Yeah, like Carrie said, we normally grow a bunch of Roma tomatoes, which are determinate that we grow for salsa and for tomato sauce and all of that. And then for vining tomatoes, we grow a lot of the cherry tomatoes. They're very easy to grow. In Oklahoma, it can be rough sometimes to grow tomatoes because it gets really hot, and the cherry tomatoes seem to do a little bit better with that. But there's also the Park's Whopper tomato, which Park is kind of famous for. That's a great tomato to go with as well. All right, so let's talk about some of the most common diseases and pests that attack tomato plants. So let me remove our pictures for a second. Okay, sorry. So I guess whenever I took our pictures away, it took our audio away. So I was trying to make it where y'all could see like all the things at once, but I messed up the audio. So blight is one that's pretty tough to handle. Blight's one of those things where if we start to see that develop, typically we're going to get rid of that tomato plant and get it out of the garden. So we're going to cut it out in the garden, put it in a trash bag, get it completely off the property because it can spread so easily. So
yeah, and you need to make sure too that you're cleaning your tools really good, especially if you do have something that does have blight. You want to make sure to keep your tools clean because if you cut one tomato plant and then you go and cut another with those same pruners or anything like that, then you could have issues with that one too. So it spreads real easily.
Blossom end rot is a pretty common one. It's not as big of a deal. Blossom end rot is typically caused by either one of two things. It's either going to be overwatering or it's going to be a lack of calcium. So if you're watering too much or if you get a lot of heavy rain, that can cause blossom end rot. And it basically just looks like the end of the tomato like develops like this gross looking area and eventually rots off. It can also be from a calcium deficiency. So you can get a soil test to determine if you have a calcium deficiency, or you can add compost. That'll help as well with this. Typically, you can do eggshells. That's a good source of calcium. But more often than not, blossom end rot is caused by too much water than a lack of calcium. At least
Usually it's like natural water. Like usually for us when this occurs is if we get a lot of rainfall and we can't really control that a lot of the times in spring. We just get a lot of rain sometimes. So sometimes there's nothing you can do when you're going to get it. So
yeah. One thing I will say that does help is we have a lot of our tomato, or most all of our tomatoes in smart pots, and they're able to regulate the moisture a little bit better, especially if you combine that with using the Mel's mix from Square Foot Gardening. So that incorporates vermiculite into your soil mix. And then that helps with regulating water basically that's coming into your tomatoes. So it's one thing that you can help with blossom end rot as well. And then at the bottom, we have all of the different creatures that are going to come after your tomatoes. So the tomato hornworm is going to be one of the biggest caterpillars you've ever seen in your life. And you're going to be shocked that somehow you didn't see it because they blend in on the tomato plant so well, even though they're giant. And they have this giant horn on the front of them that looks intimidating, that even though I know it can't sting me, I still don't like to go anywhere near it. But they're really easy to handle as far as you can just pick them off. We have chickens and the chickens love them, so we just throw them to the chickens. But when we lived in the city, we would train the birds on them. We would take them off the tomato and go put them up on the bird feeder. And we were hopefully trying to train the birds to go after the tomato hornworms for us. That was the theory, at least. There's also some caterpillar killer spray that you can buy that is organic, that is a naturally occurring soil bacteria. It's called BTK, that you can spray on your plants, and that will kill caterpillars. Another really cool thing is you can buy wasps that are predatory wasps that lay their eggs inside of the tomato hornworm, and then the eggs hatch and then they kind of eat the hornworm. It's a gross process, but it does the job. Aphids are going to be a problem on tomatoes as well. They're very easy to handle. You can just spray them off with a water hose. That's all you have to do on aphids. Also, ladybugs are a big help with aphids. So if you can encourage ladybugs around your garden, then that'll help out. Leaf-footed bugs are going to be a potential pest as well. You just spray
they
them
were our
off.
nemesis last year, I feel like.
Yeah.
We had to do like, and this was actually a picture of ours that we got, and they were everywhere, all over our tomatoes. I was like, no, but they were pretty. I mean, I say easy. I mean, it was a pain, but I got rid of them within a couple of days by simply just having a bucket of soapy water, and I put on gloves because they're gross, and I just handpicked and tossed them into the soapy water. Yeah, other things you can do some diatomaceous earth with them, or things like neem oil. But the things that you need to be concerned about with neem oil is not to spray it if your temperatures are too high. And this was in the middle of summer, so we didn't do neem oil at that time. So I just did the hand picking, but it worked really well for us. So.
And then, as much as birds can help you with caterpillars, they can also eat a lot of your tomatoes. The number one way we handle that is by growing more tomatoes than we could possibly need. So we are willing to share a little bit with the birds. But if you do want to keep them off, you can buy bird netting. You can also buy motion activated sprinklers, which help with keeping birds off. You can hang reflective tapes. Take old CDs and put them out and hang them around. The reflective nature of them spinning around will scare the birds away as well.
There's we even have an owl. Yeah, we have an owl that's stationed out in our garden.
And in our app, it has all this information for each one of these pests. So there's a pest section that lists out all of these pests and many more, and shows you the different ways that you can handle all of these pests organically. So I want to mention that as well. So let's talk about what you should plant around tomatoes. And there's some tried and true basil or tried and true tomato companions, and I just gave it away. Basil is like the number one that most people think of when you think about a tomato companion. It grows really well with tomatoes. There have been studies that have shown that it improves the flavor of tomatoes. Um, you usually want to have basil around when you're using tomatoes anyway. Fresh tomato sauce with fresh basil and fresh tomatoes is just so good. I want to make it right now. So basil's like the number one go-to there. Marigolds also help as a companion. We grow them around our tomatoes as well. Carrots. There's a book called Carrots Love Tomatoes, which is a famous kind of companion planting book. And it's all about companion planting, and one of the great companions that people know about is carrots and tomatoes. So those go really well together. Nasturtium is a flowering vine that people grow around tomatoes. It's a trap crop that brings in pests to nasturtiums instead of to your tomatoes. And then garlic also. We typically grow garlic and onions around the borders of a lot of our beds because they help with pest prevention and all that as well. So there's other tomatoes, other companions for tomatoes as well, and you can find that in our app as well. Under each plant, there's a friends tab, and it shows you things that grow well with each plant as well as the things that do not grow well with each plant. So you can check that out in the companions tab. All right, so we've got peppers next. So peppers are one of our favorite things to grow in the summer. They're really easy to grow for the most part. I think the main mistake people make with peppers is planting them too soon. If you plant them outside when it's still cold, they can get stunted and they never really recover. So make sure you're waiting until nighttime temperatures are again above that 50, 55 degrees before you're planting your peppers outside. And if you're buying them from a nursery or if you're starting them indoors, make sure that you're hardening them off. Carrie has a lot of videos that show how to harden off plants and talk all about that. So check that out. Or Andrew, if you could throw one of those videos in the chat as well. There's really no like special things you need to do with peppers. They're going to like fertilizer, the same fertilizer we use for tomatoes we give to peppers. But it should be pretty simple to grow. One thing I did not mention with the tomatoes before was a cage for the bush tomatoes. So Park sells a tomato cage that works really well, and they also have some pepper supports and bean supports and things like that we'll show in a bit. But you are going to want to trellis your peppers, or not necessarily trellis, but stake them. So we put a stake in the ground next to the pepper, and then attach the pepper to the stake up a couple feet and a couple different places to help stabilize it. Carrie, anything we want to add on peppers?
No, I don't think so. We usually grow a variety of different types. Like we love all of them, the banana, bell, hop. I mean, somebody in our house loves every single type. So we love to grow like every single variety and color and all of that. It's fun. And they're super easy to preserve at the end of the season. So I love having an abundance of peppers. So we grow a lot here.
Oops, I clicked it twice. Okay, so pepper pests. Pretty much some of the same ones we talked about with tomatoes. Cutworms can be pesky. They come out and wrap themselves around your plant and chop it off. So if you ever come out and see your plants just like completely fallen over on the side, like with severed, it may have been a cutworm that did that. But again, check out our app. It'll have all the information about how to handle all of these pests. And we're going to be doing a webinar that's all about pests coming up. I think that one's in June. So we'll go into more detail on all of these. But again, check out the app on how to handle pests. But it's very similar to tomatoes on the pests that you're going to see.
Yeah, and a lot of those pests too are going to be really simply handled by putting up that yellow sticky tape. I wish I put a picture of it in the PowerPoint. I don't know why I didn't. But there's just this yellow sticky tape that you can buy. They have it at Park. Andrew, if we could put a link to that in the chat, that'd be great. Because they're super simple. You just remove the sticky layer and hang it up next to the plant that's giving you the issues, and it'll attract the pest. Well, it doesn't attract this. The pest gets stuck to it, and it works really well.
Yep. All right. So next on the list are beans. And we plant three different types of beans in the summer. So bush beans we plant, and bush beans are great because you're going to get, it's kind of like the bush tomatoes where you're going to get a harvest of a lot at once. So you plant your beans, and typically in 50 to 70 days, depending on the variety, you're going to get a lot to harvest, and then you can preserve those. Or we like to take ours and freeze them. We have videos showing how we've done this in the past. But bush beans, you kind of get that one big round, maybe another little bit, and then it's done. Pole beans are different in that they grow on trellis, and they will continue to put out beans all summer long, basically. So it's nice to have both, because if you're wanting to preserve and do all that kind of stuff, then bush beans make it that easier. But if you want to have a continual supply, then pole beans are great for that. And then southern peas do really well in the heat. So here in Oklahoma, that's typically what we turn to for growing in the summer, because they do so well. They can handle as hot as it gets here, which can get pretty extreme. So that's typically what we do late in the summer, and then we'll plant bush beans again once we get a little closer to fall. We'll switch back into bush beans. But we typically have all of these going at some point throughout the summer. It's one of our favorite things to grow, and something I definitely encourage you to try out if you haven't grown, because they're really easy to grow, and it's really easy to incorporate into your cooking as well. So you just can take them off the vine, chop them up, throw them in a skillet with some olive oil for like 4 minutes, and they will be incredible. So that's really all there is to it. Here's some of the trellises that we use for beans. Park has this really cool bean trellis on the left that you can see that has a top and a bottom, and then you attach with string, and then the beans will grow up that string. Follow along for our YouTube this summer, and you can see how ours are going to grow up that. We also have cattle panel arches that we make, that we've grown beans and tomatoes and even watermelon and things like that up. And you can see that over on the right. And yeah, we have a video that details how to make those as well. Okay, so here's some of the other things that we grow in the summer. Watermelon and cantaloupe, both of those are going to be vining crops. Well, pretty much all of these, except for summer squash, are going to be vining crops. So you're going to want to trellis for most all of these. Now, with some things like pumpkin, you can just have those kind of grow out over the ground. It can be difficult if you have grass going around it, because the grass will grow up, and then mowing becomes a challenge. So typically we try and have our pumpkins either trellised or growing along wood chips or something like that. With watermelon, I typically recommend people start with something that is a smaller watermelon. They're going to be easier to grow, and they're also easier to grow on the trellises, like the cattle panel trellis that I mentioned. Same with cantaloupe. Cucumbers are going to be easier to grow than watermelon or cantaloupe, just because they're going to be faster. Typically, it's a little easier to have success with cucumbers, and you're going to get more off of them. So if you like cucumber, then I definitely recommend growing them. They're easy to grow. Summer squash is something that's also easy to grow, unless the squash bugs know where you live. So the first year that we gardened, we thought we were expert squash gardeners, because we got so much squash from it, and it was amazing. And then the squash bugs found us year two, and then the war began, and it's still a war that we have. So whenever the squash is doing well, it's amazing, but squash bugs and squash vine borers can be a real challenge. Yeah, so just expect there to be bug problems when it comes to squash, and you're going to have to take some consideration to protect them and all of that. And if you haven't heard of loofah, definitely check it out. It is very cool. It's in the squash family. But it's and you can eat it, but we really haven't. We typically use it for you can make like a sponge from it, so like a loofah sponge. So if you take the loofah and then you dry it out, the inside of it is just like a sponge. I don't know if we have a picture of that we can show. I know we have videos about it, so maybe Andrew could find one and post it in the chat. But loofah is pretty awesome, and it's a great thing to grow in the summer as well. And here's another picture of that cattle panel trellis. Over on the left, you can see there's a cattle panel that's arched here. Hopefully y'all can see that. And then we line the inside and the outside with smart pots, and then we'll grow up over the whole trellis. And then over on the right is a melon cradle. These are useful for getting the melons up off the ground. When they're sitting on the ground, you can have some rot issues. You can get pests that can get up in them easier. So it's nice to use things like that to support your melons up off the ground whenever you're growing those. All right, so let's talk about some of the common pests. I mentioned squash bugs and squash vine borers, and they are a real challenge. Um, Squash bugs transmit disease to your plants, so your plants will end up dying from disease. And once they take root, they are very hard to get rid of. They're very resistant to pesticides and things of that nature. The key is prevention. And in our app, we have pictures of the eggs where you can see what they look like, and that's really what you need to be looking for, the squash bug eggs, and then getting those off whenever you see them. And you can just basically take some double-sided tape or there's a roll of tape, and then take that and get the bugs off. Squash vine borers, the adult moth is what you see in the middle. You're very rarely going to actually see it in your garden, but what you'll see is the damage done from its eggs. So it'll lay the egg at the base of your plant. That egg will hatch, and then it'll tunnel into your plant and kind of eat the plant from the inside. And you'll come out one day and your squash plant will just kind of be falling over and not doing well. So check out our app. It'll have all the advice on how to manage those, but those are going to be the main problems with squash bugs. And then cucumber beetles also transmit diseases, so they can be a problem. And the best way to handle them is going to be through the yellow sticky traps that Carrie talked about earlier. And it sounds like the baby officially said she is done with cooperating, and Carrie is offline now. So I'll take over from here. Thanks for bearing with us, y'all. It's been a lot of sickness going through the house, so still trying to get through that. The name of the app, I just saw a chat come in. The name of the app is From Seed to Spoon. There's a QR code in the very top left of the screen that you can scan with the camera on your phone, and it should take you to our website where you can download it. And it's in the App Store on both iOS and Android. Okay, so let's talk about some greens that you can grow in the summer, because one of the challenges of growing in the summer is it's difficult to grow greens like lettuce or spinach or kale because they don't like the heat. So especially where I am in Oklahoma, we have to switch to some other things that we grow in the summer for greens. And here, those are primarily New Zealand spinach. It's not actually a spinach. It's not in the spinach family, but it looks like spinach and it tastes a little bit like spinach. So that's why it's called that. And then Malabar spinach, which is a climbing green as well. So those are the two things that the two greens that we switch to in the summer. If you live in a more temperate climate, you may be able to grow lettuce or spinach or things like that in the summer. But here we definitely can't. They bolt, go to seed pretty much in May is when they start doing that here. And then I want to make sure that we talk about some flowers that we grow a lot in the summer as well. So we grow a lot of sunflowers, all different types. We grow some sunflowers that are like 18 feet tall. Those are really cool. Marigolds we have as a companion plant everywhere. Zinnias are great. They bring in a host of butterflies, and they also bring in things like praying mantis and other bugs that will help out in your garden. So check those out as well. All right, and then lastly, I want to talk about some tips for how to grow outdoors in the summer. One of the challenges can be keeping your seeds moist and keeping them from getting too hot. So one of the things that we do to help with that is over on the picture on the left, you can see a picture of Carrie with burlap, and she's covering our seeds with burlap, and then we'll wet that in and spray it down really well, and that'll just help keep the seeds moist until they sprout. So you want to make sure you're going out and checking every day to make sure that they haven't sprouted so you can take it off. But especially with carrots, it can make a big difference with germinating. Some other tips are to make sure you're using compost. Compost can go a long way in helping your garden out. So the picture you see in the back is kind of a picture of one of our compost bins that we built in the past, but whenever you're typically now when we're starting to plant is when we're adding compost into our gardens. So we'll add compost in the spring and then in the fall. And then also this biotone starter, the picture over on the right. There's a lot of really great products out there from Espoma that are fertilizers that are all organic and that are all geared towards getting your plants off to the right start and all of that. So I want to stop and say, are there any questions anyone has? Anything that we want to cover? Also, I want to mention our GrowBot feature in our app. So GrowBot is our AI chatbot that you can ask anything you want about gardening, and it will give you an answer. So we're really excited about it. We've got a lot of really good feedback from it. It's continuing to grow and evolve, and we're continuing to add new features. And a lot of really cool stuff that's coming with GrowBot. So I don't necessarily see any questions in the chat. So let's go ahead and give away the 1-year subscription. So Andrew, do we have someone that we? All right, looks like our winner is Angela Walters. So congratulations, Angela. Email us at info@seedtospoon.net. Here, I'll put that up in chat. Email us here with your information, and we will get you set up with a free membership to the premium version of our app. So thank you, Angela. And thank you, everyone, for joining our live stream today. Thanks for bearing with us as we work through some challenges here. I'm a little rusty on doing these. It's been a bit since I've done one of these. So thanks for bearing with us, and looking forward to the next one. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and we'll circle back and answer them. So thanks for your time, everyone.